Hi YouTube, this is Triple Valve Metro Campbell, otherwise known as Richard. Welcome to the YouTube channel today. Thanks for joining me, and please do feel free to sub at the end of the video if you wish to, and likewise I will sub you in return. Okay, I've got something very interesting to share with you today. It's quite unique and it's something that I really wouldn't have gone in for normally, but because it was quite a very unique and something different, I actually said, well, I have one of those. It's one of these. If I get it the right way around. It's a static model of an A4, which is Mallard, and this came particularly with a recently released fortnightly magazine here in the UK called Great British Locomotive Collections, I believe. And the first issue you got was one of these, and as you can see, it's an A4 static model. And what I'm going to do today, I'm not going to actually review the model so much, it's the differences between this model and a standard 00 scale running model that you can get for your 00 scale layout, for example, from either Bachmann or Hornby. In this case, we're going to be using comparison between this and a Hornby A4. There is modelling potential with this, and that's mainly what we're going to be discussing today. If you want a full review on one of these, there's quite a few good videos out on YouTube already up and running, basically, so if you want to check those out. But this really is going to be looking at the comparisons and the pluses and the minuses, if you like, about this actual model and its potential compared to a normal ready-to-run model off the shelves. So as mentioned, you got this with a magazine. It comes in quite a large piece of card, presentation card, and you get a nice little bit of information in a little flimsy magazine you can get, which I believe you collect them every fortnight and they make up a nice binder or a decent sized folder worth of information about steam locos. Anyway, so look at this model. The first thing you notice, obviously, it's static. I'll just put this to one side. So as you can see, it's a static model of an A4. It comes on a half decent bit of plastic plinth, but a bit of realistic looking track as well. I mean, you can do all sorts of things to this as a static model, but what I'm talking about is the potential for modelling in terms of a running model. Now, a lot of people on YouTube have mainly said you can take off the body of the loco itself and the tender and do away with everything else, and hey presto, you can put this on a standard railroad model and have an enhanced running loco, if you like. One of the things that I will mention that many people have talked about already is, although it's nice to look at from a distance, when you actually get quite up close to it, one of the things that you notice about, it's got what I call a nice side and a bad side. This is the good side of the model. If you look at the wheels, they look quite realistic, but they're horribly cast. They really are cheap and nasty casting of these driving wheels. There's bits of flash on the edge of the flanges and on the driving gear, and the running gear is absolutely terrible in terms of quality. And this is kind of the good side, if you like. The bad side is the other side, and you'll see why. If we look at the driving wheels the other side, they're absolutely terrible. You can see little bits of flash in there in between the spokes of the wheels. It's not very good. And I said there's bits of flash on the running gear as well. But overall, as a static model to look at on the shelf, I mean, it's not bad. It's acceptable. I mean, for £2.99, I think the next model is £5.99, I think, and then it goes up to about £8.99 a month or a fortnight, whatever it is. But what we're looking at today is comparing the actual model. So if you look at the tender, let's start with the tender on this model. Well, to me, first of all, the paintwork isn't bad, but it's not really 100% perfect in my opinion. Compared to the nice finish you get on, say, a Hornby or a Bachmann model, this really is sort of substandard. It's just about acceptable to me. It's okay for a model, but it's nothing too fancy. Looking at the rear of the tender as well, you've got a little bit of detail on the back of the tender there. Alright, I'll give them that. They've put a vacuum pipe on there. That's about it. I mean, the buffers aren't sprung, and there's a little bit of detail there in terms of handrails and a few little lamp brackets. But let's compare this to a normal Hornby Railroad Range Mallard tender. So here's the back of the static model, and here's the back of the railroad model. As you can see, the railroad model's got a little bit more detail to it. The lamp brackets that sit on the back of the tender there are more prominent. The handrails are actually nicer. You've got sprung buffers for a start. And looking at the top of the tenders there, if you look at the top of these two tenders, for example, I would say, okay, the railroad one here in this hand hasn't got that much detail on top, whereas this one, it's got a nice little bit of recess to actually take this coal out. I'll put real coal in there. It looks a bit more slightly slimmer as well. Now let's look at the sides in terms of bodywork and finish. So here's our, as mentioned, our static cheap model, and the paintwork on here isn't overall that great. I don't rate it very much. Maybe you guys do, but I don't think it's that fantastic. It's okay for a shelf model, but the actual finish isn't that sort of superior compared to a Bachmann or a Hornby finish. The lettering is just about passable on there, I think. There's not too much. There's a little bit of detail here on the chassis. The wheels look a little bit suspicious. Now let's compare this to, say, the railroad version. If we look at the railroad version, there's a little bit of a sheen to the paint finish on there, I think. A little bit more better in terms of paint finish. The chassis is a little bit better, and the wheels are much more decent. Looking at the front of the tender, you've nigh on got the same sort of finish as the static model's got. I think there's one or two little additional labels there on the side, in the inside somewhere, I think, but it's not really much different. Let's look at the actual loco itself then. So from the front, looking at the front, let's see it run the right way. The chimney itself, this is a separate moulded item, a separate item that actually goes on there. The only thing that spoils that is you've got a plastic moulded chime whistle on the front, and if we compare that to our railroad model, which I'll just bring in here, if we look at our railroad model on this end here, as you can see, the chimneys look identical, but obviously what sets it apart, I think, is the fact that the chime whistle is a separate casting, and there's simply much more detail in general, I think, on the railroad version as there is the static model. But I think the static model gives the railroad range body a run for its money, I think. If we look at these two chimneys, they're a little, I think the Hornby one's a little bit more wider in terms of diameter there on the top compared to the chimney holes on the Carl Chap exhaust on the static model here. They're a little bit slimmer compared to the Hornby one, I think. They look a little bit larger on the Hornby version. Paint finish wise, I think the Hornby version has got a slightly deeper blue shade of garter blue. Looking at this, I'm not sure if the camera's picking this up at home for you guys, but I think that the static version here has a slightly lighter shade of garter blue compared to the railroad version here on this side. Looking at the paint line finish around the white bit that goes around the top of the front of the boiler there, that goes right the way around, that kind of thin white line that's just behind the chimney. it looks as a little bit slightly off on the static model version compared to the Hornby version, which is here. The only thing I would say that the static model does score quite high in my opinion, is the cab. The cab's got some nice glazing to it, both on the side and the offside windows, and also the front as well. Oops, shouldn't get this up at all, but like here and here, you got glazing in the cab there, as well as on both sides of the driver and fireman side. You've got glazing there as well. Also in the cab, you've got a driver and fireman seat, and also some reversing levers that have been painted silver. That's about it for the cab details, nothing else too flashy in there. The cab roof's just moulded basically with some brass painted safety valves on there. But overall, I mean, yeah, you probably could actually remove this body, to be quite honest, and do away with the chassis and the crappy wheels, and just put the body, even if you put the body itself on the railroad one, you might get away with it. It's quite possible. But like I said, this is just a static model, and if you want it as a static model, then it's fantastic. But if you want it as a running model, then definitely we could get rid of the chassis. Everything below the waistline and the body, throw away. It's crap. But the body shell itself is really, really quite nice. It's not bad. It's got a few little faults here and there, but overall, out of 10, I'd probably give this body, about, to be quite honest, I'd give it about a 9, because as most people have said on YouTube so far about this static model in terms of potential, and quite rightly saying so, is that you couldn't really get a half decent tender body and a loco body for an A4 for under a fiver. And if you go on, for example, eBay and look around eBay, 9 times out of 10 you'll pay a lot more than certainly £2.99 for an A4 Hornby body or a tender body for an A4. So I think, yes, this has definitely got potential, and the Hornby Railroad version is obviously more superior in terms of appearance and performance, but does lack in a few odds and ends in terms of detail that this model already does have for a cheapy model. That's really it, to be honest with you. So looking at these two models here, I'm just going to stop the camera for 1 second and bring these down to sort of an eye level so you can have a good look at these and judge for yourself which is the good or the bad A4, or if they're quite close in comparison. So I'll be with you in a second. Okay, welcome back. So here we go. Here's the two A4s together. Now, the one closest to the camera on the table is the Hornby Railroad version, and the one up on the plinth obviously is the cheapy plasticky one that comes with Great British Locomotives issue 1. Now, as you can see, to be quite honest, they come very close in terms of looks. And I'm not sure actually manufacturer actually makes these, whether it's got something to do with the National Railway Museum or Hornby. I'm not sure. I think maybe Hornby or somebody have had quite a dip in the blueprint designers from the Hornby models for these ones. As you can see, just having a look at these roughly, they're quite identical. And the reason I put them together like this on the table is so you guys and girls at home can sort of compare the difference and decide which one you think would be the better body. And it is quite tempting actually to rip the body off the railroad version and put the body of the static model on the railroad chassis. It's very tempting to do that. And the great thing about it is that it's not too hard to do, to be quite honest. There's only a couple of screws underneath and just a blanking plate that separates the chassis from the actual body. Once you've removed all that, you've got a hollow body that you're left with that you can quite easily adapt to a railroad chassis. And it's been done, it's already up on YouTube, there's quite a few people have done it. So maybe, just maybe, I might do that. But I wanted to bring these two together today just to show you really the standard of quality in terms of the body itself and the representing what an A4 looks like, or certainly Mallard, that's been done with the static model. Like I said, everything below the body line is crap, but the actual body shell, as you can see, it's quite authentic. So we've got railroad version here and the static model version here. Yeah, I'm just noticing on the one of the things I just picked up on, these handrails that go along the side here all the way down to the front area, these are a little bit more thicker on the static model compared to the railroad version, but it doesn't really matter, I don't suppose. Let's bring it over the top so we can have a little gander from the top view. So the only thing you'd need to do really is just remove the tender body and the loco body, and that'd be about it. Because the railroad chassis, in terms of the motor and the actual wheels and the motion and running gear, is fantastic. But unfortunately there's a few little details missing on the body. For example, glazed cab windows. That's one of my pet hates, by the way. I really dislike models that don't have any windows in the cab of a steam loco. It looks so toy trainified, and it's a shame really. Because the white trim, or the silver trim should I say, around the side of the window there, that's correct. If you look at the National Railway Museum Mallard that's in the collection, or pictures of it on the internet, you'll see that this silver trim around the window there, that's correct, but it should have glazing in there. It doesn't. That's anything missing. And on the static model version, you've got the glazing in the cab there and the side window there, but no silver trim. So you sort of got to weigh up the pros and cons of both these models and decide what you're going to do, and if you really want to go for it and convert it. But other than that, that's really it, apart from these two A4s. So I'll leave you with some food for thought there. If you're a model railway fan like me and you've got both these locos in your collection and you're thinking, I wonder if I could do that, then I'm sure you could, and it's definitely possible because there's videos out there on YouTube. But a little bit of food for thought. I hope you enjoyed the video today, and I hope it's been informative and helpful for you. And I'll see you again soon, and I definitely will be reviewing the next loco out, which is the Coronation Streamlined class. And I've got a Hornby Duchess of Hamilton, which is the National Railway Museum full-size loco, as well as the model size loco I've got. So I'll be doing the same pretty much with those two locos, comparing them in terms of detail. And I just hope this video has been helpful today for those of you that are looking for detail comparison and generally have a look at the model themselves compared to the running version of the model. There we go. Have a great day. Take care. See you soon, and happy modelling. All the best. Bye bye.